Okay, my name is John Mangatakis, and I want to welcome you all to CHOA 2015 Meets the Candidate Forums. Unfortunately, we had a little competition down at CNN, and I called them up today and asked them if they'd reschedule their event, and they told me they couldn't. There were too many people traveling. So we have a conflict, and I'm sorry for that. But we are looking forward to a very comprehensive and informative evening. First, I wish to acknowledge the following individuals who helped structure this event. Nancy Silver of RPV was just extremely helpful. And Mark Dowdy of RPV TV is also here and is handling the TV segment of this. I'd also like to acknowledge our board of directors, Jeannie Lacombe, who's sitting in the back, Krista Johnson, who is not here, she has a strep throat, Trim Hamilton is also in the back, Jack Ferris, where is he? Up here. He's also our timekeeper this evening. He forgot to bring his watch, but that's okay. Jeff Richardson is not here this evening, unfortunately. Attar Iman is right here in the front. And Dana Smith, who's a recent member to our board, is not here also. She's visiting her daughter. The candidates this evening, I think, are well known. We have Jim Knight, Greg Royston, Jerry DeHovic, Ken Ken, and Susan Brooks. Our moderator this evening is Liz Brown Swanson. She is a reporter and producer for this city's cable television station, RPV TV. Ms. Swanson joined RPV TV in 2007 and hosts a monthly talk show that features the mayor focusing on current issues before the City Council. Liz was a news director at Cox Cable, with her 3-decade career includes working with ABC, NBC, CBS affiliates. Liz and her family reside in Rancho Palos Verdes. Liz, your show.
All right, well, thank you, John, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to moderate the Candidates Forum. First of all, I want to thank all 5 candidates for being here this evening and doing what you're doing, and to all the members of CHOA for inviting me, and for the audience who is providing me with questions, you can still pass them this way. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I want to let you know that what happens here tonight will air on RPV TV on Channel 33 Cox and Channel 38 Verizon, and according to Mark Dottie, our station manager, he says we will see these airing on September 23rd through September 29th at 8 o'clock every night. So pass the word so more and more of the community can be informed in what's going on with this election process. Before I start asking the questions tonight, I want to go briefly over the format for tonight's forum that was presented to me by CHOA. First of all, the forum, we've slated it to run for about 2 hours this evening. We're going to take a 3-minute break about an hour in, and so I'm depending on my timekeeper here in the front row to keep us in line and on time. And I also want to let all the candidates know that you will have 3 minutes, I think you've been told, for opening statements and 2 minutes for closing remarks. And the candidates will have 2 minutes for each question that you're asked. And if a specific question comes for one candidate, then all the others, if you choose, you have an opportunity to address that. And you, again, have 2 minutes to answer. We're going to enforce time limits. I know you're all good at that. And our timekeeper here will keep us posted. And I just want to ask everyone here to be respectful of each other and to not interrupt the candidates. Candidates, don't interrupt the candidates as you are speaking, and for the audience to hold your applause till the very, very end. And I think, just again reminding everyone, the purpose of our forum tonight is to inform the public out there about all the views of our candidates here that are running for a 4-year term on the Rancho Palos Verdes City Council. And so with that, I think we'll begin with opening candidate statements, and we'll start with Jim.
Okay. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, the Council of Homeowners Association, for putting this debate on. It's important for our residents to understand each one of the candidates' views of the current city situations and the future plans for the city. I guess you may know I've been on council since 2011. I'm currently the mayor. Before that, I was on the Planning Commission for 8 years. And just my overarching statement I like to make is we really all moved here for a reason. And I think the reason we moved here is for the quality of life. And that has been, and always will be, my primary goal is to preserve the quality of life. for all our residents. And that encompasses a lot of elements. We are one of the few cities around that have an abundance of open space. It's beautiful here. I have been, and I always will be in place to preserve that open space, and I have many accommodations from the South Bay Chapter of Audubon Society and Benny Carnett and the Sierra Club in terms of my conservation efforts for that. And the other element is preserving the character of our neighborhoods. On the Planning Commission for 8 years, I understood fully the general plan, which is a vision of our city, and the development code, which is an implementation of that vision. And I've always been an advocate of preserving the quality of our neighborhoods and not allowing mansionization, and making sure the development is reasonable and within the guidelines of our code. The other aspect I'm always working toward is a responsible financial planning of our city. We've had a balanced budget for a long time. I work with my colleagues on council to make sure we continue to have those balanced budget, and we want to use our resources very wisely. And attached to that, I've been working hard in terms of trying to make our government more efficient. I'm currently Vice President of the South Bay Cities Council of Government, and I work with the South Bay Energy Services Center, and over the time I've been on council, I've been able to save the city a lot of money in terms of making the city run more efficiently and have the electrical consumption especially reduced to the point it's saving you, the taxpayers, money. And the other aspect that really creates the quality of life for us in this city is the public safety. I've worked with my colleagues on council to make sure we have a safe city, but make sure we maintain a safe city, and that takes vigilance. We have to really work with the Sheriff's Department, find out what their needs are, find out what's necessary in the community. We hear from you residents, we hear what your issues are, and we hear where you may have some issues with crime. We respond to that, and we work with the Sheriff's Department to enhance what they need, give them the resources they need, and provide the tools they need to help our city remain safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. And now it's Greg's turn.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Good evening. My name is Greg Royston. I want to thank CHOA for putting on this event and giving me the opportunity to introduce myself to more of the residents of RPV, and which, to be frank, is actually quite important because I'm not an incumbent. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm running, why I think a change is needed, and finally what I'll bring to council. First, about me, I'm a small business owner and I'm a real estate attorney with an office here on the Hill. I've got more than 20 years of real-world business experience, including more than 8 years of public accounting and tax experience, and 15 years of legal experience. I'm not a litigator. I'm a transactional guy. I represent individuals and companies, and I work to keep them out of court. This is an important distinction because a lot of times people think attorneys are always in court. On a personal level, my family and I have lived in RPV for about 10 years. I'm married and I have 2 kids, both of whom are in the PV schools, and my wife, who also teaches in the PV school. She teaches art. I've been involved as a volunteer in AYSO, Little League, PV basketball, and over the last 7 years, an active member of Boy Scouts. I'm on the board of my local HOA, and I serve as one of its liaisons to CHOA. Finally, I love the outdoors. I'm an avid user of RPV's dog park, and I even occasionally like to skateboard, surf, and even hike. So why run? I'm constantly teaching my kids through Boy Scouts and as a parent the importance of giving back. For me, it's about practicing what I preach. For me, it's about choices. It's about integrity, accountability. It's about helping the community because I can. It's about trying to make our city better. It's about having a sense of humility, respect, and a willingness to listen to those we serve, even if we disagree with them. It's about checking your ego at the door and not trying to convince everyone that you know everything. If I get elected, I will listen and I will be humble, and I will check my ego at the door. When I make decisions as a council member, those decisions will be in the best interests of all the citizens, not a select few. This campaign has been truly eye-opening for me. As a matter of style, I've always tried to listen more than I speak and have a sense of humility and even a sense of humor. Over the last few months, I've met with large numbers of RPV residents, and I've noticed several common themes. Namely, that people are concerned because they don't feel like the majority of council either hears or listens to them. They're concerned because there's still too little oversight of city staff and not enough questions being asked. namely Green Hills. They're concerned about the rash of crime and the public safety, and this council's answer to it. And finally, people are concerned that not enough questions are being asked when it comes to the funding options that the majority of the council prefer to use. Basically, there's a mindset of raising taxes and fees rather than utilizing the massive budget surpluses that more effectively. In sum, I will bring to the council a willingness to listen, even when I disagree. Equally as important, though, I will bring a legal background to the council, which there's currently none. If elected, people will know that they can count on me to ask tough questions and get answers, that they can count on me to hold people accountable, act with integrity, and provide oversight, period. Thank you for support. I'd appreciate your vote on November 3rd.
Okay, we're going to now move on to Jerry.
Good evening, everyone. Another beautiful day in Rancho Palos Verdes. I'd like to thank CHOA for sponsoring this event. I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight and for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you. My name is Jerry DeHovic, and I've had the pleasure of being one of your city council members for almost 4 years now. I also served as the mayor of our fine city in 2014. As I've said many times before, serving on this council truly is an honor and a privilege for me, and I'm very humbled and grateful for the opportunity to be representing all of you and working on your behalf. I really can't believe how quickly 4 years has gone by. I would like to say that I am very proud of the work done on my 4 years on council and the record I've established. As I've said many times before, I love the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, as corny as that may sound, and I'm passionate about our city's future. I want to continue to be an integral part of shaping that future. I, like you, care very deeply for our city. We are truly very lucky to be living where we do. You know, I've traveled to all 50 states, and I can honestly say I don't think there's a finer city in our great country. One of my primary reasons for running for council is I believe in the ideal of service, and this is something that was taught to me at a very young age. And that's the practice of getting involved, proactively giving back to the community and being part of the solution. As such, I believe that with my experience on council, my education, my military training, and my 27 years of business experience, I do in fact offer a unique skill set, expertise, and perspective to continue working for the betterment of our city. Quickly, by way of background, I was born in San Pedro and primarily raised on the east side of the hill in the Eastview section of RPV, where my mother still lives, 40 years and counting. I believe I'm the only candidate up here who can proudly say I grew up in Rancho Palos Verdes, and I can claim the title of native son. I'm a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and attended undergraduate pilot training. I currently am an owner, partner, and director of a large investment brokerage firm and serve as its executive vice president. I've served on numerous investment industry committees, panels, boards, and also as an expert witness. My expertise is in finance, regulatory matters, compliance, corporate governance, and employee issues. I also owned a business in Rancho Palos Verdes for 5 years. I also served as the vice chair of the RPV Finance Advisory Committee in 2011, and again was your mayor in 2014. My primary objective will always be to protect, preserve, and improve our quality of life. I believe that starts with dealing aggressively with our public safety and infrastructure issues. Second is ensuring the city's financial health and well-being through responsible, conservative fiscal policies. I will continue to run the city like a business, making the often tough decision between needs versus wants. I believe in true transparency, oversight, and accountability. I keenly understand that I'm accountable to you and only you, the citizens of Rancho Palos Verdes. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ken?
Good evening, and thank you, CHOA, not only for this forum, but for what you've done over the years in helping the community grow in accordance with some of the goals that most of the homeowners have. I moved to this peninsula in 1961 with my family, and that began my service in the community in terms of giving back. I formed a homeowners association there. I was the precursor to what is now CHOA, and president of that organization through the incorporation. I was fortunate enough to be one of the 6 people on the policy committee of Save Our Coastline, which orchestrated the incorporation of this city. And that was an experience that gave me a lot of knowledge in terms of how government works and financing works. I spent, I guess this...
Shouldn't be penalized for that.
We'll stop the clock.
Not working. It's intermittent.
Ken, take mine.
One of those infrastructure issues.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me now? Oh, very good. Can we turn the clock back a few seconds?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyway, I spent 3 years on SOC and I learned a lot. I was fortunate enough to be elected to First City Council, served 3 terms, and I served a stint as mayor. Those were the formative years where we really represented the people because we asked the people rather than staff to decide what they wanted their city to be like, and they put a goals report together, which is the general plan we are all living by. People said that that was old and stale and needed to be revised. I put a committee of over 200 people throughout the peninsula in 2002, and it reaffirmed all of that. With that kind of background, working on the city, working in almost every committee and commission that the city had over the 42 years, replacing a councilman who had passed away for a while with a unanimous vote of the city council at the time, I think I bring a unique qualifications in terms of history, knowledge, and experience, unique among all the candidates. There are a lot of concerns. We can talk about how beautiful the city is and all of this, but we need to talk about some real issues. Council oversight, to my mind, is a culture that needs to be enforced and improved because it permeates throughout the city. And if you don't have council oversight, which is knowledge, not a micromanagement, which is interference, basically you set that culture throughout the city and you voice some of the mistakes we've had lately, and you can all expect and identify what those were. The other thing is I spent 2 years putting transparency together for the employees, and that particular spreadsheet has been adopted by the city, the first city to do so. We've made great strides in terms of transparency. OpenGov is another example of that. However, it doesn't go far enough because you don't really know what a specific project is and where the money is coming from. So that becomes a problem. We need to go even further than we have. With that, what I'd like to say is that having been elected to council, I don't consider having been gotten infinite wisdom just by virtue of election. It's the experience I've had over the years. So therefore, with that experience, I hope that you'll vote for me on November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Are we going to be sharing the microphone?
Yes, I guess we are.
We can all share. All right, then. Susan?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Outside, there's a little brochure here, and in this brochure is a little picture, and in this picture is my family, and I'm with my grandchild in one of them. And I'd just like to ask you, by a show of hands, how many of you are grandparents? Could you just raise your hands? Well, did you know that Monday was National Grandparents' Day? So happy National Grandparents' Day. This election is about future generations and generations to come. It is about our children and our grandchildren, and that's why I held that picture up. This is our paradise, and I am running for this seat to preserve and protect this paradise. It is extremely important right now in this era of social media, where we have seen droves of individuals coming because it's fun and it's beautiful and we know it's paradise and now it's been discovered. And so we need to figure out a way that we can bring in revenue while also maintaining the crowds that have emanated around certain areas, the problems that have happened at the coastline, problems with other areas located throughout the city, our streets, our switchbacks. Our quality of life is being affected. And it is crucial that we make the right decisions. In the last 4 years, a lot has happened. You know, I've heard talk about taxes and fees, and, you know, ironically, the council votes unanimously on these things, so if there's any other subterfuge there, I think we should know about that right away. But in fact, I have been an agent of change on this council, and I'm really here because I want to do what's best for the people of Rancho Palos Verdes. You pick up the phone and you call me, and I get the job done. Whether it's a peacock issue, whether it is an issue with parking in a certain area, whether it's over a building that has been taking too long to build, whether it is a city street tree policy, but I have been able to communicate with people through my informal coffees that I've had monthly, and learned a lot from you. And actually, you, the residents, have been the one who've given me the opportunity to go to my council and bring it to them for passage, which has happened. So it's been, it's hard work. It's very different than it was when I was on the council some 24 years ago. Well, actually 22 years ago. It is very, very different. It's much more work. Social media has really made it difficult. So I just want to give you that little introduction and just say, I hope I get your support again, and welcome to our paradise.
Okay. And now we're going to begin with the questions, and I appreciate getting questions from you in the audience, and you can continually bring them up to me. And with that, I'm going to start with Greg. We'll continually go down the lineup here. And for starters, what do you see as the most pressing issue right now in Rancho Palos Verdes, and how would you go about resolving the matter?
Good question, Liz, or whoever put that in. One of the reasons why I got involved, I got robbed about 1.5 years ago. Sheriff came in and, they did their investigation. They ended up 10 feet from my kids at night while we were home. That's when I started getting involved, and I started looking at local issues. And I looked at how our council was answering the rash of crime that we were facing. And it wasn't just me, it was multiple people that I knew that had break-ins in our neighborhood. And their response was to go to the sheriff and see if we can bring in a couple more sheriffs. But the problem with that is that it was $500,000 a year for 2 sheriffs. And I looked at that and was like, you know what, we've got massive budget surpluses here. And with that, you've got to be able to make reasonable decisions, and $500,000 for 2 people wasn't reasonable. I've got clients that are in the securities business, and they approached me. They were saying, this is ridiculous. For $500,000 a year, you can put a veritable army on your streets. We are a contract city. We should be going out. Somebody should be asking these questions as to why this is happening, and then what is it that we can do to get the most bang for our buck. At $500,000 a year, you could literally put cars all over the place. Whereas if you've got 2 sheriffs and you've got one over on Western Avenue and one down in Golden Cove, what about the middle? What about everything in between? Whereas if you had private security in there, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the answer, but I'm saying it's an option, and I'm saying that somebody should have asked these questions, there can be a lot more that can be done. I talked to Sheriff Boland. He even agreed. He said, look, we just need more eyes on the street. And whether it's somebody with a gun or whether it's somebody that's holding a phone, as long as they've got, the phone number for Lomita Sheriff Station, that's one thing that they do really well, is they respond.
Okay, thank you for that, and we'll move on to Jerry. Same question, what do you see as the most pressing issue right now in the city? How are you going to go about resolving the matter?
Well, thank you, Liz. I think that public safety and infrastructure are number 1 and 1A, and have always been for a number of years. I respectfully disagree with Greg next to me here. I think having trained sheriffs patrolling on the Hill is very, very important, and there are legal issues that he may not be privy to with respect to private security and what can be done and jurisdiction and authority, et cetera. I do agree with you with respect to the more eyes, the better. That's why instead of funding additional detective work behind the scenes, I pressed for 2 cars and 2 full-time sheriffs dedicated to Rancho Palos Verdes. Now, those cars are not going to be on Western Avenue and one other section. They're going to be moved strategically throughout the city in different sections and corridors. so the bad guys won't know where that additional firepower is. So I do agree. I think we are handling it correctly. We're talking about the automated license plate readers. We're talking about working with the neighborhood watch groups. We're talking about cameras in neighborhoods. A lot of residents are coming forward with respect to how do we put cameras in our neighborhood. And these are all, unfortunately, things that we need to do because there has been a rash of crime, and nothing worse than having a resident tell me that they're traumatized and scared to sleep in their own home. The next most important issue is infrastructure, and I've talked about Portuguese Bend for a long, long time. Just several of you driving over here, I'm sure tonight, just look at that road and what we have going on. We've got El Nino coming, and God only knows what's going to happen there. We've got a lot of different things with respect to an infrastructure issue. We have 7.5 miles of coastline. We have storm drain issues, a whole host of things. So number one, all the time, is public safety. Number two is infrastructure. So I think the council is doing a pretty good job in attacking those.
Okay. Ken?
I agree that those two are very primary. I have a slightly different approach with respect to the Sheriff's Department. When we became a city, I negotiated the first performance contract in the Sheriff's Department that had ever existed. And since then, it's been adopted by most cities and the Contract Cities Association. The problem is, over time, it has eroded back to essentially providing money to the sheriff and letting them decide on how to perform. Now, you take a look at their response times, and that's good. But what we did at that time, we actually had specified specific performance criteria, specific kinds of moving around through the community, basically to show force, even though you didn't have 4,000 cars, but you were actually moving through the community so that no one knew when you would be there. But there's another aspect to it, and that is educating the people. A lot of the break-ins on cars and homes, open windows, open doors, unlock cars, laptops and computers in the car. The sheriff had a program where they put stickers on cars at one time thanking them for keeping the doors locked and not showing any expensive equipment. I think that should go a step further and say, you just been robbed. If they do find something like that, let's shake the people up so they understand. Go down the streets and you'll see garage doors open all over the place, and all it is a button that needs to be pressed to basically handle that. Infrastructure is a problem, but we've got to be careful. The council sits there, goes through an election for storm drain, and then the ordinance is written as water quality and flood control. That's not what was voted for. We need to actually have our ordinances reflect exactly what was voted for. Thank you.
Susan, again, the question, what do you see as the most pressing issue in RPV right now, and how would you go about it?
Well, fortunately, I've had the fortune of being at the end of this, almost the end of this line, and I think Jerry did a great job and Ken did a great job of identifying. Once you're in the office, you're working, you've rolled up your sleeves, you really get to see a little bit more about just what this job entails. So I would like to thank them both for pointing that out. I would just say that I'm a member of the Regional Law Enforcement Committee. That includes 3 cities. That's Rolling Hills Estates, Rolling Hills, and Rancho Palos Verdes. And on that, we are actually the oversight committee for the Sheriff's Department. And Anthony Misitich, Councilman Misitich, and I are on that committee for the city. When you look at the actual crime statistics, they actually have gone down since 2013. But the problem is not these burglaries because of Prop 47. That is reducing the crimes from felonies to misdemeanors, and this is a revolving door of crime that's taking place. They'll be here one day, and then they'll go to Laguna the next, and then Beverly Hills the next. And it's very carefully organized. So by adding those patrol cars and those ALPR readers, and by adding volunteers on patrol and giving them opportunity to give citations and uniforming them, and by adding SAT detectives, which is the next thing. SAT detectives are the detectives that follow up on the crimes. They can leave the city after the patrol car. This is key. We all know public safety's job one. That's one of the reasons I ran back for city council again in 2011, because we had a robbery in our neighborhood. And we had to pull the whole sheriff's department in. And we have the strongest neighborhood watch program, and we have very few problems at this point. I would say that infrastructure, of course, is number 2. It's probably well over $100 million in infrastructure needs that this city has. And I would just finally throw in, because there's a moment, this quality of life issue, which is really, really crucial. We have new graffiti abatement programs, but clearly we have to think about less is more when it comes to parks, passive parks. We are looking at this with the community, with the Parks Master Plan. Thank you.
Okay, and Jim?
Yes, I think my colleagues have picked probably the 2 most important issues of our city. In terms of public safety, along with my colleagues, have voted to increase the sheriff's deputies on the Hill, and also the license plate recognition readers to help in terms of monitoring some of these criminals that are coming through. The other aspect is, again, using those dollars efficiently. I'm very much an advocate of getting more volunteer patrol people to be involved with the Sheriff's Department. What that does is these people can be at the counter, these people can be in cars patrolling areas, and release those sheriffs open to really protect our neighborhoods. So that's an efficient use of our money in terms of trying to get more sheriffs out there on the road. And I've also worked with Captain Boland. When I first met him, we both sat down together, and we both agree that the public education and reaching out to people is extremely important. So I've worked with him to get into some of the homeowners associations. We have a sheet put out, educate them as to what the crime statistics are in their neighborhood, and give them tips on how to prevent the crime. Part of that is having the neighborhoods aware not only of not having their purses and laptops in an unlocked car in the driveway, that's kind of basic, but having them aware that if they see something suspicious on the street, give them a call. I can't tell you, we have gotten some emails several times, a follow-up on some crime where somebody saw something funny, they pointed out the car, maybe wrote down a driver's license number. Those guys were caught. It really makes a difference that you're really involved, the community is really involved. And in terms of infrastructure, it is a very big issue. What the city's going to have to face. We are going to, on the council, going to be approaching a large list of infrastructure projects that we're going to have to prioritize because we don't have enough money to do everything. So we're going to have to set those priorities, and that's very important to the council.
Okay. Well, this next question may have everyone's wheels spinning. It has been something making headlines and has to do with skateboards. Will you vote for a self-funded skate park now or relegate it to the master parks plan where it may not get built for many, many years? And we'll start with Jerry.
Thank you, Liz. I've been an advocate and a proponent of a skate park prior to being elected. I spoke in favor of it back 4+ years ago. And I still stand ready to support a skate park. I think there's some misconceptions in the community right now. A self-funded skate park is they are going to pay for the construction, okay? The city will participate as far as some limited maintenance, oversight, and what have you, but the big dollars are going to be raised by the skateboard community. So that's a lot different than someone saying we need a pool, we need a gym, and those are city dollars. This is somebody, a group stepping forward to bring this asset to the city. And if you look around at almost every major city in this country, most of them have skate parks, okay? The bottom line is we need something for these kids to skate and be safe. We want them off the streets. We don't want them bombing. We don't want them rolling down Hawthorne Boulevard. And the city spent quite a bit of money when I first got on council too, looking at different venues and sites. And I know that there has been a little bit of outcry recently about not putting the skate park at City Hall. Well, I think City Hall is the perfect spot. It's close, it has mass transit, there's the cover and appearance of authority there, you have ultimate supervision, we can lock it down at night. There's a whole host of reasons. There's limited neighborhood impairment or view issues. And we actually had a consultant several years ago, like I was saying, look at the multiple parks we have in the city, and City Hall, in my opinion, wound up being the best venue to make that happen. So the answer is yes, I support it. The devil's in the detail. We're going to look at it and work at it. I'm glad it was part of the city parks master plan, but we also have to look at how the city hall location is going to be configured. Thank you.
Okay, Ken, then.
Yeah, I think a skateboard park is an important asset for the city, just like almost any other thing. It's become a professional function now, and the children that are doing it, some of them have aspirations of being professional. The one thing I would like to see, though, is that it be constructed in such a way that it can be easily relocated, because we are going to have eventually a master plan for the city. I don't know that we have to wait until that's done, but I would like to see the skate park put in a way that we can relocate it, perhaps even in the same area once the master plan for the Civic Center has been put together. Under those circumstances, I see no problem with the skate park at all.
Okay, Susan?
That's really interesting. Relocating a skate park, how do you pick up cement? But
Do you have to make it out of cement?
No, I guess not. I
Okay.
think that's a great concept. First of all, I'm a convert when it comes to the concept of a skate park. I did not originally support the notion of a skate park, but when it became really apparent that it is a uniform means of sports activity for our kids, it's just really obvious that we really need to have this. And so for me, this was really a heartfelt decision, in addition to the statistics that came to us with this. Now, there is a skate group that is working together with the city staff to bring this forward. So I'm not sure what you meant by the question about the Parks Master Plan, but I know that it's supposed to come to the city with that. But clearly, I do support the concept. I do support a skate park, and what we have to find out is the group that is organizing it is working together with the city staff, and once they become more cohesive and get that opportunity to us, then we'll be able to move on from there. But clearly, I do support a skate park of the right size for this community. But one thing I want to make sure is it can't be a regional attraction. We have enough regional attractions right now. Thank you.
Okay, Jim?
Yes, I understand a lot of kids, and I see a lot of kids skateboarding around the city, and sometimes they have no place to go. They're bombing down streets or whatever. They're going down streets that are unsafe. And so I agree that it would be great to have a place for the kids to have a skateboard park. I'm not convinced that the city hall is the right location. I have some concerns with it. Like Jerry said, the devil's in the detail. But one of my concerns is the skateboard community was very clear to us, the kids were very clear to us that they use their skateboard for transportation. And so what I'm concerned with is you come down Hawthorne, the sidewalks end right around Vallon Drive, and then you're right in the street. And I'm just concerned that there's going to be kids that will be tempted to come on down Hawthorne Boulevard. Then you got to cross left to get over there in a left turn lane. I just am very concerned about the safety of the kids with this location. I do think there's some probably better locations that would serve. There's a high school, intermediate school. There's a spot near there that could be utilized for some kind of recreational facility for skateboards. So I do want to see the kids have a place to do skateboarding, but I'm not convinced that the city hall is the right location.
Okay, Greg?
Thank you. I'm not going to flip-flop on this. I'm for it, and I think that you need to put a vote to it now. If you look at statistics, 90% of the PV school principals support this. They need a place for the kids to go. 90%, including Mitzi Kress over at Penn High School. People don't understand that bombing and skateboarding are completely different. Skateboarding at a skate park requires approximately a 3-foot board. Bombing requires a 5 or 6 foot board, or a 4 or 5 or 6 foot board. Completely different. I think the concerns about going downhill on Hawthorne on a 3-foot board are ludicrous. There's no person in here, think of it in terms of a soccer mom. Well, think about skateboard moms. Can you imagine any skateboard mom allowing their 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old to go down Hawthorne on a 3-foot board at 60 miles an hour. Come on, it's just not being realistic. I agree with Jerry. I think that the City Hall is the least invasive place to put it. Otherwise, it goes to what Susan was talking about, and then you end up having an attraction where people, would go to some other park, and it's going to be in a neighborhood. It's the best place to put it is at City Hall. So I would be supportive of it.
I'm going to do one more follow-up to this question that was given by the audience member that gave this to me. He really wants to know yes or no. Will you vote on this now? And I know you said that you would.
Oh, yeah, I said
How
definitely
about you,
yes. I'm not
Jerry?
flip-flopping on this.
Well,
You can't vote on it now,
And if
it's
you
not on the
can't-
council.
First of all, I don't make decisions without all the detail
Right.
and all the facts and
Yeah.
all the there's a lot that goes into this. Do I support this? Yes, I do. Do I want to see it move forward timely and quickly? Yes, I do. But I am not, going to commit without knowing what the heck's going on.
Okay, how about you, Ken? Wheels are spinning.
Again, I support it if it's done in a way that can accommodate some of the other needs of the city. As far as voting yes or no now, that would preclude my ability to vote on it when I get on the council. I'd have to recuse myself. And that may be the vote that you need to get it done. So I'm not going to commit now, but I do support it if it can be done to accommodate the future of the city.
Do you want to respond?
That's a persistent question, Jim, so I'm just going to answer you personally. When your group gets together, and you have a group that come together with the city with a viable plan, then this council's going to look at it, because this question is being asked, and you need to get right to the point about this. I mean, there's division within the skateboard group itself. And so the community needs to be aware of that. So it is not just hold up a placard and put up somebody's sign on your truck. This is really a group decision, and it's a community decision, and it works together with the city. I have made a commitment that I support a skateboard park. I support what is appropriate for the size of a community of Rancho Palos Verdes. What I do not support is a regional park that will draw more crowds from out of the area over to Rancho Palos Verdes, so we will have one more problem that we have to deal with.
Jim, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, well, I've expressed I have some concerns about this particular location. I think some of the locations are probably better. But I have to agree with my colleagues here that I do not tell you which way you're going to vote until I have seen all the information, a full staff report, all the information as to what the proposal is. Public input is very important on that as well. So I couldn't answer yes or no at this point.
Can I just make a clarification? I think the question wasn't, are you going to put it in? It was, will you actually even consider it? Will you put it on an agenda?
The question was vote on it now or delegate it to the master
Vote on
plan.
it
But I think
now.
we've actually covered this, so we can move on to our next question. Thank you all for that. All right, the next question, we're going to begin with Ken. And we've seen a lot of changes at City Hall. We have a new city manager, a new city attorney, a new finance director, a new IT provider. Our deputy city manager retired after many years. So with all these changes, do you see the need for more council oversight at City Hall? And what is your philosophy on the relationship between the council and the staff?
I'm a great proponent of oversight because that's what we did when the city was first formed. And again, it's knowledge. And what that does, it creates a culture in the city that everyone performs better by virtue of having that kind of oversight. It doesn't mean micromanagement and interference, not at all. As far as the contract city and city manager form of government, yes, you do work through the city. The council makes the decisions. The council directs the city manager, and that flows down to the rest of the staff. And with the kind of oversight that I would like to see, there will be sufficient knowledge on the council that it would create a culture that would avoid some of the mistakes that we have seen occur. Most recently, the errors that have occurred with Green Hills. There were other ones that I can mention, but really it would take a long time. So, yes, oversight is important. The relationship with a city council, city manager form of government is a good one. We chose it deliberately, and we should continue it, but use it effectively and create a culture where it'll be cooperative and effective.
Okay. Susan?
You know, oversight can mean two things. It can mean the city's oversight of an issue, or it can mean community oversight. Now, we have more community committees, and we have expanded those committees and recently formed a new committee called the Infrastructure Management Committee, whose sole purpose it is to really try to get a handle on exactly what our problems are with regard to storm drains, sewers, sanitary sewers, all the street maintenance, the landslide issues, massive. You know, do we need any more sinkholes? No. So oversight, really, I look at it as the council manager form of government is the form of government that we have. It is the majority form of government for the cities of our size. And the council manager form of government is you hold the city manager responsible. And that, you only hire two people, the city manager and the city attorney, both of whom, by the way, are new. It took us 4 years to get to this point. So when we talk about problems that happen with Green Hills, you can go and look at poor oversight from previous administrations, not poor oversight from this one. I have full faith in the city manager that we have hired. This individual is stellar, came to us with the Transparency Award for the best city, and he is taking us to that level probably by the end of this year. I really think that we need to be very careful when we look at micromanaging, because when we get to that point, we can take away from one's own professionalism and their ability to do their job. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat the question, or you know my
What's
question?
that?
Do you need me to repeat the question, or you?
It's just basically about the new employees and,
Just, you know, what you describe your philosophy of the relationship between council and staff, and you see the need for more council oversight at City Hall.
Yes. I've had opportunity to work with Doug Wilmore, our new city manager, and Deborah Cullen, our new financial director, and we just got Dave Alshire on board as our city attorney. My impressions are, I think we're in good hands. I think they're very, very capable people. In terms of oversight, the council ultimately decides what is spent, what isn't spent, and what projects go forward and what don't. We have ultimate oversight. The issue here is, do we listen to our staff? If we have a project, say like San Ramon, and we have professional engineers and know what they're doing in design, and we have consultants, do we step in and say, no, I think you need to have a different design or something? We need to have a collaboration with staff and our city manager and our city attorney. We use their expertise to give us the advice we need to make the best decision possible. And it is ultimately our decisions. Ultimately, we have the full oversight, and we do performance review for a city manager or city attorney. If there's any issues we have with them, not doing what we feel that they should be doing, we sit down with them and say, well, we have an issue here, let's get it corrected. We have full oversight on that. But we need to respect that we have a very qualified, very, very professional staff that can give us a lot of good advice in terms of giving us the staff reports and the advice we need to make a proper decision.
I think it's really important to have council be involved. Sorry. Can you hear me now? I think it's really important to have council involved. The city manager is really the only one, that and the city attorney, that they hire. They're the ones that they have to deal with. In terms of oversight, you know, it's really easy to throw the former city attorney and the former city manager under the bus and blame it on them with Green Hills. The city attorney had been in place for 25 years. And if there's, you know, things that happened over the last 25 years, we wouldn't know because we've only had one attorney. And you can't have she's not going to look at herself and say, I did something wrong. I think it's important to listen to the staff, but I also think it's important to ask questions. We have a lot of really smart people in this city, and a lot of times I think that people don't get listened to. They get ignored. You know, if you've gone to a city council meeting and you look at the amount of time that is spent by certain members of the council patting everybody on the back, saying, you're so wonderful, you're so this, you're so that, people, they kind of get lost in the mix, like, are we being listened to? I sat at one council meeting, and I almost felt like Kumbaya was going to start getting sung. And it was so congratulatory. You guys are doing such a great job and this and that. It's like, come on. It's like they work for you. You know, they need to be asked serious questions. They need to be grilled on what's going on. And I just don't see that that's happening during those meetings. I think more instruction needs to be given to the city manager to instruct staff to come up with things that are going to be listening to the people and what they want.
Okay, Jerry.
Thank you. I went back in preparation for running again and looked at the issues that I thought were important 4+ years ago, and one of them was oversight, and that proved to be 100% correct on multiple fronts, and I can't get into explicit detail due to confidential issues and what have you, but I do believe in oversight, not councilmanic interference where we're telling people what to do. But I do think, and some of the things I did bring forward in June of last year, some topics for discussion that were summarily dismissed, and there's a whole host of reasons for that, but I do believe in oversight. If we're hiring, for example, a $175,000 a year employee, I don't think it's too much to ask the city manager, which, by the way, our current city manager does without having it codified, do you have an opinion, or do you know anything about this, or do you have anything that can help me in my decision-making process? That's not councilmanic interference. That's knowing what's going on. Another issue would be if we had a dramatic change in the structure within the city. We're going to scrap community development and roll it all into public works. Well, we hired an expert city manager, and, you know, by our council manager form of government, they can make that decision. But I think it would be prudent to talk to the council about this. Some of us on this council have expertise in that arena, and I'm among those. So maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive to providing data and feedback from an objective point of view. You know, we have oversight from multiple fronts, from ad hoc committees that all the council people sit on that most people aren't aware of, from our citizen committees, from citizens themselves. I sat down with John Minotakis and Krista Johnson for about 5 hours and went and looked at how our benefits are administered, and we looked at the city's contracts for the city manager. Part of that came forward from that is I brought forward the idea of agreed upon procedures where we get an outside independent third-party accountant to go look how our money was spent. Are people using their vacation correctly? All these good things. That's oversight, people, and I do believe in it. So thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the next question, and we're going to start with Susan. This is from the audience. Did you answer, Ken? Yeah, you did. I started with you. All of a sudden, I thought I heard someone said, what about Ken?
You start with me?
No, I started with you at this last question, so now I'm going to Susan.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I overheard someone in the audience saying I skipped you, but staying on track here. Okay, Susan, RPV view Proposition M was passed in 1989. It is outdated and needs updated. The hedges of neighbors have overgrown. Prop M needs to address hedges. What are your thoughts on this comment?
Well, I was around when Prop M came into place, and yes, Prop M does need to be tweaked. I think that came from Akbar. But it's a very, very successful program, I will tell you that. It actually is used as a model around the United States. So there are always going to be things, and now we do see that some changes do need to be made with regard to hedges and bushes, because you don't want to have hedges that can grow to be 10 feet tall when, you know, you're maxed out at your fence at a certain height, and then it takes away your view. And the difference between a hedge and a tree. So lacing is very important, but I can just tell you that, you know, it is a workable ordinance, and we also have, the city has hired a mediator. I am a mediator myself. I'm a professional mediator. And I have to say that she does an excellent job. So very often it doesn't get to the level where you actually have to file your $5,000 application when you do have a problem. And when you do have that kind of a problem and it persists, you know, it's always best to start with your neighbor. That's how we started this. I was actually a planning commissioner when the view ordinance began in 1989. And then I went on to the council in 1991. So it went through several changes since then, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve. But I'd just like to just take a moment to address something that was said about the council members patting one another on the back. You know, it's very important that we be convivial to the extent that we can, that we be professional, and you know, it is something that I do as a mediator in trying to bring people together. Thank you.
Okay, Jim?
Yes, I was on the Planning Commission for 8 years, and you would not believe some of the cases I had to adjudicate with some of these. We had one situation where we had 5 homeowners and, no, I think it was about 7 homeowners and about 3 different property owners that had trees, and we had to figure out angles and so on. It's very complex, but Susan's right. It's probably one of the better ordinances around. Obviously, views is extremely important in our city. We live on a tiered type of terrain, so it's very important. Can it be tweaked? Yes. I think there's some areas that probably need to be tweaked, but remember, it's a voter initiative. We can't completely rewrite the view initiative, but we can certainly look at it and tweak it the best we can to address some issues. Hedges have become an issue in some areas, especially on some upslope properties that they grow a hedge that is not within the view ordinance, but it can grow up to a point where it can block someone else's view. So I've actually talked to staff about looking at some possible language changes with the view ordinance to address these situations. Sometimes you have an ordinance or a development code, and you can't think of every possible scenario out there. And sometimes these things rise to the surface, and my whole point is to have full equity as best we can between tree owners and people with views. And we try to strike that balance. And believe me, on the Planning Commission, these cases are probably the most difficult cases we have. We have, you know, complex development proposals with 107 CUP conditions, but the view restoration cases can be very difficult because you're really trying to balance out the people's right to have their foliage and the people's right to view. But I think the ordinance is well written, but it can be tweaked, and I've even talked to staff about upgrading some of the fine points to it to address the hedges.
Okay, Greg.
You have something that was passed in 1989. Things change. Circumstances change. Sometimes they change either through circumstances or through obsolescence. You need to be able to roll with the changes because an awful lot has changed here since 1989. A lot more people, a lot more houses. And, you know, in the event that, you know, you've got a mediation program that's involved, that's good. It keeps things out of court. It keeps your costs down. It allows people an alternative means by which to resolve their dispute. I think that's a good thing. In the event where you need to change language or tweak it, or, you know, if you've got to send it back to the electorate to say vote on it, then you do that. And I don't think you know, if you bring that to the council and they can discuss it and go forward with, hey, this is a reasonable thing. It's like, you know, all 5 people up here, they're reasonable people. You know, it's just a matter of being able to, you know, flush out the details, and you know, sometimes you just need to change those things. So either through obsolescence or circumstances, things change, and you got to be able to change as well.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you. Just to point to what Greg was talking about, you know, we've basically been at the same population for the last 25, 30 years, and the city's basically been a build-out. We have, you know, spits and spats of development, but not a whole lot. What has changed are the trees are growing and the bushes are growing, okay? I think the view ordinance has worked well over time. There does need to be some tweaking to it, and there's 2 schools of thoughts. The view ordinance dealing with private property and how the city is dealing with public property. I can tell you, in my opinion, and I believe the opinion of this council, we were derelict in dealing with the public assets, the city-owned trees and bushes, and enforcing in certain neighborhoods that had conditions for those neighborhoods to trim those trees. And we've gotten much more active on that in the last 6 to 12 months, I believe. Unfortunately, the way you have to deal with a lot of that with non-cooperative people is through the enforcement process. And sometimes that's distasteful. And I can tell you, you know, view issues, neighbor against neighbor, I've been involved with many of those. I've been called for help and for mediation, and they are horrible. You've got somebody, it's nothing worse than, you don't even want to eyeball your neighbor right next door to you because it's controversial, or they think that your kids are being attacked, or your wife's upset every time they enter your house. That's what this gets down to. And there are things that can be tweaked. For example, if the height of a particular tree is supposed to be 16 feet, I know in one particular case that the neighbor who cuts that tree cuts it to 15 feet and 7/8. So in about 2 weeks later, it's over that 16-foot marker, and they don't have to come back for a year to deal with that. So these are kind of things that we can look at and tweak, but overall, I think it has been a model, and I think that most people are pretty happy with the process. You can't please everybody, and you can't solve every problem, but we're trying hard on that, and we'll work harder to get that done in the future.
Okay, Ken?
It is a matter of equity, and I will relate very briefly. When I bought my home in 1961, the tax bill came in with a valuation for the property, a valuation for the improvement, and a valuation for view. Because I had a view. I paid for that view. I lost that view, went to the Planning Commission to get it changed. They said, we can't change it. What they did is they rolled the value of the view back into the property. So now I'm paying for a view, taxes every year that I don't have. And that's the thing I think people don't understand. It's a matter of equity. I asked them, restore my view or reduce my tax, either one. I was satisfied either way, but I'm not willing to keep paying for something I no longer have. Things have been changed over time in how they've been interpreted. When the view ordinance was put in, and we fought for it way before '89, I was a champion of it when we first got to the city. Because of that 1961 experience, we actually had developments made so that the corridors between the setbacks would provide views. Now, they're saying 16 feet even in the setback. That was never in the intent. The 16 feet was because the right to build a home to 16 foot high was there. And if you built one a bit lower, 14 foot, you could put a tree 16 foot up, or the height of the ridge line. So the criteria and how they're being applied is changed. They also measure it differently. You put down a criteria of what is a significant view. That's in the eye of the beholder. I didn't buy a significant view, I bought a view. For someone else to decide what's significant, I think is wrong. These are the things that need to go back to the original and not reinterpret, but go back to the original, and it'll solve not only the tree problem, it'll solve the bush problem as well.
Okay. The next question starts with a yes/no answer. It starts with Jim. Yes or no, knowing the city's healthy reserves and city's finances, do you support, yes or no, extending the storm drain user fee, which sunsets in 2017? Why or why not?
Yes.
And then why?
You asked for yes or no?
Yeah, yes.
The reason
That was a trick
is-
question.
Okay. The reason is we have a large list of infrastructure projects, and it's our duty to protect you and your safety out there with the infrastructure and make sure our city is as best it can be possibly be. I think Susan quoted over $100 million worth of infrastructure improvements we need to have. We're not going to be able to do them all. We don't have enough money to do them all, but we can set priorities on them. The storm drain user fee, that program has several advantages for the taxpayers. Number one, you're being taxed for something that you know exactly what that tax is going to be used for. It can be not used for anything else, just for storm drains. Number two, there's going to be a community oversight on how that money is spent. So you're assured of that. So you have a system of helping the city fund infrastructure improvements that gives you a much greater guarantee that your tax dollars are going to be used exactly for what it was promised to be used for. So that kind of structure, I would think most people would agree with. We do have reserves. We do have healthy reserves. We have a 50% reserve policy. But beyond that, as I said, we are going to, once we get through the Infrastructure Management Advisory Committee and recommendations, we get the Department of Public Works, give us a list of the infrastructure projects. Once we have that list, we're going to have to set priorities. We're not going to be able to fix everything. And so I think that we just need to realize that we have a limited amount of resources for a lot of infrastructure we need to repair.
Okay, Greg.
I'm going to give you the lawyer answer. It depends. This thing is going to sunset in 2016, and there was language that was put in when it was originally drafted, and it has to go back to the electorate to vote on it. We don't know what that language is going to be. We don't know if it's going to be the exact same thing. Are they going to tweak it? Do they know things? Do they know things now that they didn't know back when they originally put it in? That's one thing. So I don't know that it would be fair to ask if you can support it, yes or no, because you don't know what the language is. In terms of just conceptually, when you look at the city and we have a huge surplus every year, primarily because of Terranea. And we have a storm drain user fee, which I think is like $100 or something less than that. One wonders, it's like if you continually say, it's like, well, we just want another tax because we want another tax, at what point is enough enough? When you have such a massive surplus, why then do you automatically just say, well, we want more tax just because we can? And I don't think that that's necessarily right. I think that, from a conservative fiscal point of view, is that you tax people for what you need, you set aside healthy reserves, which we have, and you budget accordingly. We have a huge wish list of everything that we want to do. There's no doubt about that. But if we didn't have Terranea, we'd still have the same wish list and we'd still have to do the same things. But I don't necessarily think that you necessarily have to have all these different taxes just for the sake of having them. So.
Okay, well, Jerry?
Thank you, Liz. It's an interesting question, and again, being a council member, I can't tell you, and I won't tell you now which way I would vote. The question is, do I support it? At this point in time, probably not, and here are the reasons why. Number one, we don't get to decide as a council how would we vote. My vote is just as good as your vote as a citizen. That's going to go out to the residents, and everybody will get to decide, and majority is going to rule there. That's number one. Number two, I don't have all the data. If you don't know, and at my insistence over many, many years, if you go back and look at the record, I kept talking about a storm drain master plan. When are all the storm drains going to be inspected? Oh, we're at 50%, we're at 60%, we're at 75% over. Finally, all the storm drains have been looked at, they've been videoed. Now we can make an intelligent decision. I haven't studied that storm drain master plan to see what the overall condition of the storm drains is. That's number one. Number two, no one ever thought that the TOT revenue generated from Terranea would be where it's at today. We're at 5.3, 5.4 million. Everybody was happy when it was 2 million. We've got a lot of money there to deal with. So that's a question for me too. Number three, I want to go back and look at what was promised to the residents way back when they voted for it. What was promised was, we're going to put this in, it's going to sunset, and we're going to use TOT to supplant this in the future. I don't want to change the rules in the middle of the game. I want to see what was promised to the residents by prior councils, and we'll take a look at that. Number four, yesterday, as late as yesterday, our new city manager and head of finance came back and said, there might be a better way of identifying what the true surplus is at the city, ladies and gentlemen. Instead of just rolling monies over for projects that were never started, those should be reallocated every year, and at the end of that time, we may have a massive surplus that we don't even know about yet. That's coming forward. And finally, only 80% of our residents pay that tax. I don't know if that's fair or not. I'll have to go back and revisit that. So the answer is, until all these questions are answered, probably not.
Okay. Ken?
The people were told when they asked to vote for the storm drain user fee that the storm drains were going to be repaired. You expect the ordinance to say storm drain repair ordinance. It doesn't say that. It says water quality and flood control. That's a very, very broad subject. I've questioned the current staff. I've questioned the city manager. I've questioned the people talking about OpenGov. I've looked at the records. I can't find a real record yet that tells you where the money is coming from, how much is being spent specifically on drains. I'm of the opinion, and I've seen some of it, that some of that money is diverted to flood control, which has got nothing to do with repairing a pipe. So there's a problem. Councilman DeHovic makes a very good point. At the time Taranea was going in, the community was kind of upset about it, even though it was going to be our source of revenue that would be controlled by the city, not by the state. We wouldn't rely on sales tax because we couldn't build another shopping center. They implied to the public that Taranea TOT, when it gets built up, will be used just for that purpose. Now we're talking about a new tax? What for? Let's go back, like Councilman DeHovic said. We made a commitment. Now, it wasn't, I didn't make the commitment, Councilman DeHovic did, but our council did at the time. And I think to a certain extent, we are obligated to actually honor that commitment and do it that way. No more taxes, and quit adding fees, because they are also nothing but taxes.
Okay, and with that, we are going to take a...
I didn't get that.
Oh, I'm
answer.
sorry, Susan. Just like the old days of doing the show. I didn't mean to cut you
Go
off.
get them, girl.
Well, this is definitely one of those issues that is a community issue. I can tell you, when it was first imposed on me, I thought, why am I paying this tax and my neighbors on Ganado are not? Like the street apart from me in the next canyon. So I couldn't understand how the whole thing was being broken down. And then, of course, it was explained the county versus the city once the city adopted these sewers. So this is such a, here's one case where I would agree with the lawyer, the mediator here. I would say you can't give it a yes and no. It's not a green light, red light. You have to get the information. Jerry pointed out some excellent points. 80% of the people are paying and 20% aren't. I couldn't figure that out initially. Now I know. But you know what? We have 3 committees dedicated to working on this. Our Finance Advisory Committee, the Water Oversight. See, there's an oversight committee that I was mentioning earlier. And the IMAC. It's not IMAX, folks. It's IMAC, Infrastructure Management Advisory Committee. And when they come back to us with that assessment, we'll know and we'll have a better feel. But as far as the surpluses go, we have $30 million. You have to stop and think, okay, but if we need $140 million, if we need $90 million estimated for infrastructure and an extra $50 million for water quality restrictions by the state and federal government, which are coming too, you have to add all that up and say, hey, can we just keep relying on this cash cow? First of all, that is a mistaken identity to think that that is always going to be successful. We hope it is, but we don't know. So we have to be prepared for El Nino, something very serious, and I'll tell you, that is going to go away right away, whatever that $30 million we have. So we have to think about long-term gains we get without taxing unnecessarily.
Okay, so with that, now we're going to take a short water break, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll have another hour to go with lots more questions here that we're going to ask. Thank you, everybody.
Too.